I'm an Alabama.
Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter
457.
It is the first day of the week, aka the Kamehameha workout. I'm feeling very good right now, very excited for this workout. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Relapse. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because I saw that clip that I probably put in the beginning of this episode. I don't even know if I'll be able to show a full amount of that clip because of how serious it is in that sense, and as well just the entire subject matter of relapse. I just wanted to look at it because it just reminded me of that. Somebody who takes their sobriety away in something that they know is basically eating them alive, really. And I think that this is a very interesting subject matter in general, just because I think everybody's been there for the most part. I've made an episode in the past, a long time ago, about how good habits die hard. See this episode right here about that. And it's a very strange thing to happen, really, where you are trying so hard to get out of that rut, whatever it is, and especially if it's something as life-threatening as fentanyl or something like that, that's a whole other demon with it. But I think a lot of people struggle with these demons and just trying to figure out what you can do to get out of it. But then the relapse back into it is the tough part. And you hear stories about it all the time. The one I always think about whenever hearing about this, about relapsing in and it being disastrous, is the singer for Sublime, the original one, not Rome, that basically relapsed in heroin and ended up dying from an overdose. So it's stuff like that. You hear these stories, and it's a very tough situation, especially being not only hearing it, but also you being a person who does this, but on a smaller scale in theory, hopefully, But in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that and a lot of stuff that goes in between that, because I think that we all have our own habits, whatever they are, good or bad, that we kind of fall back into, especially the bad ones, whatever reasons that they are, for whatever reason. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that and a lot of stuff that goes in between that when we get to Mother Base.
All right, so start this day off with the dips, which are pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Relapse. So the main reason I wanted to discuss relapse is because of that video that I had watched in the front there. And it was something that was just on my mind for various different reasons. Not the Eminem album. I do not listen to Eminem. But anyway, I think that this is just more of a interesting subject matter, particularly because the internet is very public, and with public knowledge like this, where you will see people in their lowest, you will see the worst that happens to them, and sometimes you will see them relapse. A lot of the times it is quite astonishing / terrible seeing that, especially when you know it's somebody that you may or may not be clean. A good example of the opposite of this is Bam Margera. He ended up getting clean after his friend died, and he basically became an alcoholic. He already probably was one before that, but now is getting out of that. But also as well, it is nice to see him getting back to his roots in a passion, which was skating. So that is the opposite of that. But usually when we talk about relapse, you think of like the crazy stories, because realistically they always have some type of tragedy within them. The singer of Sublime, who ended up going back into heroin after quitting when he overdosed and died. The Phil Hartmans of the world. Phil Hartman's wife ended up getting addicted to coke again after being introduced again via Andy Dick, who ended up killing Phil Hartman. Not Andy Dick, but his wife killed Phil Hartman. Rest in peace. And things like that, where addiction relapse can often lead to disastrous consequences, whether it be as serious as death, but it can even be something as simple as a relapse in judgment or character, where you revert back to who you once were, and that feeling of just who you once were is taking over again. And it's really tough to get out of it. I think that most people have had this experience at least once or twice whenever they were trying to quit something, whether it be small or large. There's that guilt feeling that comes into something like this, that moment of weakness that you have when all of a sudden you go back and revert to your old self to go feel a creature comfort that you had once felt, just to feel something for a moment, for any reason or another, most likely stress, because your life is stressful and that's how it usually ends up going. I think that this is something that most people struggle with. I don't want to say that this is a shameful thing, because a lot of people end up having to deal with this type of stuff. I think that generally speaking, it is sad whenever you see somebody have to deal with this, or if you see somebody that you know have to deal with this. I had a friend who basically relapsed on weed, which is a terrible thing in a certain sense, but at the same time, you could see that what is it? They had been clean, and then all of a sudden they got back on in it, and then thus there is nothing really that you can do about something like that, where it's a road that once you know they go down, you kind of just have to abandon them and move on, really. And it's kind of sad in a certain sense when you see that, or even in yourself, just because it's a temporary or possibly permanent step backward into a person that you once were and are too comfortable to get out of, really. I think that that is a harsh lesson for a lot of people in order to learn, really. You'd be more fortunate in a certain sense to have somebody else in your life learn that lesson, which is terrible. But a lot of people don't get that, or they are the lesson for every other person in others' lives, which is a sad state of affairs. But the honest truth, sometimes, where they are the one to be doomed by whatever their addiction may be, and then thus they are going back to the well once again and again, to the point where until it reaches disaster in some shape, or form. This is all from Old Habits Dying Hard. Like I said, I talked about this in an older episode, but the grooves that they've put into our brains have really made it so it's hard to get out of it. It's hard to climb out of these ruts that you kind of get yourself into, especially if it is something as strong as drugs or anything like that, where the relapse can take over. And often I feel like, even if it is something small, something, for example, like let's say you bite your nails, something as simple as that. It can seem like such a bigger deal because it should be something that you should be able to give up, but for some reason cannot. And that's one of those things where it's like the internal monologue or the internal guilt of trying to figure out what is the issue that is causing this, and is as to why these responses are the responses that they are. I feel bad for anybody who has to deal with this, or for whatever it is, really, because I think that most people deal with it and have to deal with the shame. You get your people that are stuck in a addiction to pornography. They are truly feel that guilty feeling. The post nut guilt is a true thing, and it has felt, every dude has felt something like that. But it's a similar feeling to everything like that, where it's just a rush of depression, or a what am I doing with my life. And it's a terrible thing to deal with, and it's never anything that I would shame somebody to, but it is one of those things that if you can avoid being that person, that lesson in someone else's life or in your own, try to avoid it. But at the same time, I think everybody has to deal with it in some way, shape, or fashion, which is one of those unfortunate realities of the world that the world does not prepare you for. It just gives you another thing to replace whatever addiction you have with another addiction somewhere, somehow, because we've never really actually tried to solve the root causes of these things, or try to promote people above the person that they are and try to keep them in a more comfortable state in order to get them into the GDP and making more money for the state, of course, and the country.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Relapse. And no, not the Eminem album. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because of that clip at the beginning of this video, but as well, I'm currently watching Fish Tank, the 5th season of it, of a live stream show that is pretty good, but there was a contestant on there that was dealing with basically kratom withdrawals and also nicotine withdrawals all at once. And this is somebody that obviously they are going to provide these things for the person, but they need to work for it. But the thing is that when people go through that hell that is withdrawal, it is understandable and easy to see how the idea of relapse can be so easy, particularly with things like alcohol and heroin and those hardcore drugs, because you hear about it all the time in jail where people will get like the shakes and stuff like that for like weeks on end, or just like sweating it all out every single night for a good while as it works its way out of your system. Particularly, I know for alcohol, it's crazy, the things that they have to go through for like true alcoholics going through withdrawals. It's a very tough time, and I can understand why these people would want to just go back to it and not deal with that and just forever be in that cycle, really, of perpetuity to the end, really, where you become the Ouroboros of your own demise. But it is it's a fascinating thing that is very understandable, but yet it's probably one of the most mentally fortifying thing that you can possibly do is to avoid relapse as much as you can. It's hard to do it, especially if the addiction runs strong and has been deep, but I think that most people have the capacity to do it. Not everybody has the capacity to do it. Or there's also the idea that there is the the capacity to shift the choice of drug, even though it's not necessarily a drug, but still it's just changing it to something else. So a lot of people will end up going from like hardcore drugs to like food or something like that, where the shift goes into a different direction, but yet it's still in a similar sense the same thing, where they are consumed by it, basically by their consuming. But relapse in and of itself is the easy choice and also the understandable choice, because sometimes the difficulties of life can really make it so that these types of things make it really easy. I mean, if you look at somebody who's like addicted to like adult content, let's just leave it at that, the relapse is relatively easy if you go on social media, because social media throws that in your face. And also if you end up let's say you consume other things, let's say you are into weed or something like that, you follow other people who do it, something like that might be enough to get you to say, hey, fuck it, you know. Also, the idea of giving yourself little like rewards for it, like that's only good up until a certain point, when the reward becomes too much, or it's just not going to be enough to cut it out, specifically because it depends on what the hell it is. Like if you're like, oh, I cleaned my room today, time to do heroin, it's not going to work out for you. So I think that it sucks, because it's that feeling of just you fucked up, but at the moment you don't really care, and it's kind of it's a shitty feeling. And I think most people have at least experienced it once in their life for whatever the bad habit they might have. Or there is some people that just never have experienced that, where they don't have some sort of just a self-reflection to see, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that, or you know, like this was a terrible decision, none of that. And those people are very interesting people. They may or may not have a soul, but that's a different story for a different day. With that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, and stay warm, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!